what other approaches work for you in relationship building? Because it's very important for people to know, like, trust you in order to give you those bigger checks, $100,000 or more.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of, I would say, like, a bit of the 80-20 rule. About 20% of your investors are really going to be super fans and invest heavily. And really, it's important not to spread attention evenly, but you should really disproportionately focus on those who have helped you grow the most. I think that's really important to kind of keep that priority. In addition, find ways to kind of leverage some of your wins, right? So share your wins, find good communication channels. When you're small, find ways to meet in person and as a group. And when you're larger, find ways to have, a nice, kind of intimate communication method, whether it's, via email or social or really whatever your sort of authentic channel is there.
This is the Real Estate Vibe Show, and I'm your host, Vinki Loomba. As a real estate investor and a fund manager, I'm always excited to explore the world of real estate opportunities with you and for you. And today I have a very good friend, Neil Wahlgren, with me. Welcome, Neil, to the Real Estate Vibe Show.
Hi, Vinki. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited for our conversation today about the triple net and net lease industrial. It's going to be super awesome. We just closed one project together. Actually, it's still in works, so we're going to talk about that too a little bit. But before that, let me talk about Neil. A little bit about Neil. With over 20 years in operations and capital markets, Neil joined MEC Capital Partners in 2019 after managing a substantial real estate portfolio in the Bay Area. A U.S. Air Force Academy graduate and seasoned C-130 pilot, he has extensive flight experience, including combat tours. Neil holds a BS in operations research and an MBA from Texas A&M. He resides in San Francisco with his family. Once again, Neil, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to learn about your bio, especially that you were a pilot. I didn't know that side of you.
Yeah, that's I refer to it as my prior life, but spent a little north of about a decade, right out of high school, went to a Air Force Academy, and then got a flight school spot, pilot training, and then about eight or 9 years of operational, flying the C-130 around the world, both with the active duty Air Force and a little with the Navy Reserve.
Wow, pretty awesome. We're going to talk about that today. I wanted to learn more. But today our topic is from pilot to industrial sale leaseback, mastering net lease industrial in today's market. And we all know investing in industrial sale leaseback offers a unique opportunity for savvy investors looking for stable long-term returns. And especially in today's volatile market, industrial sale leaseback presents a compelling investment avenue. It offers stability and predictable returns. And I have seen that in my current deal with you, Neil. And this strategy capitalizes on strength of the industrial sector, allowing investors to secure long-term, reliable income streams. And it's good for tenants investing in the property's upkeep, while companies also benefit from liberated capital to reinvest in the core operations. It's a strategic choice for those seeking to diversify in the economic landscape, especially today's landscape. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you this question, Neil. Can you explain the concept of industrial sale leaseback and how it fits into the current economic landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So, industrial being the asset class, largely, there's a handful of different varieties out there, but we try to focus on really what we call light manufacturing. So think very agnostic, multiple purpose type of, really just four walls and a roof, right? Typically steel-sided walls, a flat roof, and really you're creating a enclosed space for a number of different users to do typically a mix of manufacturing, storage, shipping, receiving, and sometimes some administrative in there. So when you buy these assets, they're typically going to be really associated with long-term tenants. So especially, compared to say, retail centers or multifamily that are having, really short-term leases, a lot of turnover. The industrial space, you typically will have single operator. You're going to have a long-term lease. We typically target about a 15 to 20-year lease with these.
Mhm.
And then the way we like to buy these properties is through sale leaseback. And that sale leaseback, just for those who may not be familiar, is when we come in, when you have an owner occupant. So imagine a manufacturing firm, they own the real estate they operate out of. And when they are seeking what we call off balance sheet capital, we connect, we effectively purchase the real estate off of them.
Mhm.
They get an influx of capital, and in return, we get a long-term, typically a 20-year absolute triple net lease. And so it benefits us because we're buying, a great asset. We have really a nice fixed income structure, and that income's going up every year with built-in rent escalators. And for them, they're able to get a nice influx of capital that they're typically using to pay off long-term debt and for growth initiatives within their firm.
Interesting. So, but why industrial? I mean, what was there in the pilot life that kind of made you pivot to this industrial or the real estate investing? So, can you talk
Yeah,
about or take us like in your previous life, give us some sneak preview there?
sure, sure. Yeah, I got into real estate to back up a little bit. Really in my last days of flying, I got introduced to kind of the turnkey single family rental model. So I bought a couple of houses out of state in Indiana, and they were nice. I bought them. There was management set up on them. They're cash flow vehicles. Saw some of the tax losses in a good way from there. And that kind of whet my appetite for it. And then when I was getting out of military flying, really I made a decision, do I need to look at, or do I want to look at going to be a commercial pilot? Very structured, very, kind of a very predictable path. Frankly, most military pilots go that route. But ultimately, there's really no great way to separate your time from your income stream. And I looked at my real estate and went, all right, I can make money without spending direct time on this for the most part, anyways. And this is scalable in a way that I can't do with my time in the cockpit. So that was kind of my pivot point. And I initially joined a firm in the Bay Area where we were focused really on investor relationships, and then we would partner with different sponsors. We had multifamily relationships, we had industrial, retail, office, some development, really a nice spread. And across all those different, kind of business relationships and sponsors, I liked the industrial model. It made sense to me. We had even bought a couple of properties that had some aerospace manufacturers, kind of really hit close to home there. And I loved, really the predictable income stream, kind of the optimization on cash flow. Because that to me was really the draw on real estate, was this idea of, hey, am I getting truly passive income in a way that I don't have to think about it? I can scale this, and this is effectively funding, it's lifestyle money, right? And I like that model with the industrial and the long-term leases, really just less moving parts. And that's what kind of drove me to the asset class. And I was lucky enough to find some great partners along the way that, currently comprise Mad Capital where I'm at.
You said a very good thing. You said lifestyle money or lifestyle capital or kind of lifestyle choice for you, I would say, moving from being a pilot to the real estate investor. So when you started in this real estate arena, what was that like? The first experience, your first job or first partnership? What exactly you brought on the table? I'm pretty sure a lot of skill sets that you learned in your pilot years. If you can share that with us, how you got started or how was the first partnership formed and how did you change yourself to fit into this mold?
Yeah. So the first firm I joined was again focused more on the capital relationships with mostly high net worth investors. And in that was a small shop, and the owner I'd known for some time, and he primarily needed help with operations. And from the C-130 side, being a pilot in a multi-crew aircraft, you have the flying component, but you also have, really almost like a project manager where you're managing a co-pilot, a navigator, a flight engineer, load masters, crew or cargo, and there's just a lot of different skill sets, a lot of different moving pieces that you have to, kind of align and get all moving in the right direction. It's a lot of just very strategic, kind of operational discipline where, we were really, really heavy into checklists. We're really heavy into, kind of what we call operating procedures, consistency, ways that we knew we could improve. Each time we did an iterative raise of capital, we could improve that. We could make sure we're not missing anything and provide a good experience both for our JV partners focused on the real estate and our investor partners as well. So that was kind of the initial role that I came in at. And then over time, really started developing up investor relationships of my own. And then when I joined Mag Capital there, kind of bringing a mix of that operational experience from the flying side, and then, really kind of the just relationship piece of, investor relationships that, you learn how to build over time and basically realize how to set expectations, deliver what you say you're going to, and then kind of grow those relationships in a deep and meaningful way.
What was your first raise like? Was that from family and friends or?
Always, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone starts there, right?
Mhm.
And this was, I think when I first started with that prior firm, it was maybe 2014 or so, about 10 years ago, 2015. And yeah, I mean, the raises, I think we were raising maybe $1 million at a time. I mean, it wasn't a lot. It was small individual projects. And it was, kind of a core group of initial relationships, a lot of what we call family, friends, cousins, fathers, mothers, grandfathers, close friends that a long time, school buddies, et cetera. And then, you kind of start there, and then you grow it, right? And how do you grow it? Largely, you do what you say you're going to do, and you invest alongside them, and you just, if all goes to plan, you become successful and you grow your net worth collectively together, and that really people want to be a part of it. People want to bring their friends and family into a circle that feels special, right? And that you're able to grow your capital in a way that exceeds some of your other opportunities, and really just that kind of boutique focus and relationship building, I think, was how we went from $1 million to, I mean, I think last year we raised over 150 million here at Mag. So I mean, quite a big trajectory there.
Wow, that's very nice. You said something very interesting. You said invest alongside and then you grow yourself as well as, whosoever is connected with you in your pool, all the investors. You're growing collectively. So I heard a lot of times in the real estate industry where we are, you and me, people talk about other people's money. So most of the time, like they say OPM and then use their money to grow their wealth. Maybe they do not have their own net worth that much that they can invest in each and every deal themselves and grow that way. And that might take a long time for them. So what kind of advice would you have for somebody who's looking for a growth a little bit faster, but at the same time, building the right relationship is going to matter, right? But
Yeah, no,
that might not be the same level as yours.
it's a great question. I mean, as an operator, you're always trying to find where that, how far to lean forward in order to accelerate your growth trajectory, especially if you feel like you have an edge in a certain asset class. Conversely, you want to make sure you're being conservative enough to keep alignment with your investors who've helped your growth along the way. Some folks will refer to capital raising as sales, and I really don't like that term, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, there is some elements of sales when you're working with your investors, but we've always kind of taken the approach in the firms I'm at, really to go, hey, this is like we have a strong conviction on this deal, right? We feel strongly about this, and even if it's not necessarily a huge amount of our own money, I mean, we always will invest, typically at least 3 to 10% of the total capital, but we'll say, hey, you know what? Like, guess who I'm bringing in? I'm bringing in my grandma. My grandma's putting 100K in here. My mom is doing 50. So even if it's not exactly your individual money, that like inner circle, I feel like is meaningful to other folks, right? And share it, and share it freely and go, I believe in this deal enough that I've pulled from those who I trust and who trust me the most. And I think that's a great starting point because that means, all right, like you believe in this deal. And now I'm kind of inviting these other investors really to invest alongside me. And that's really the approach I think is the most authentic when it comes to raising money and kind of growing your network in that way.
So beside giving people a trust that you're investing yourself alongside, which I do that too all the time, I invest in all my deals regardless.
It's great.
And
Yeah.
so once you're doing that, that builds that trust. But beside that, what other approaches work for you in relationship building? Because it's very important for people to know, like, trust you in order to give you those bigger checks, $100,000 or more.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of, I would say, like, a bit of the 80-20 rule. About 20% of your investors are really going to be super fans and invest heavily. And really, it's important not to spread attention evenly, but you should really disproportionately focus on those who have helped you grow the most. I think that's really important to kind of keep that priority. In addition, find ways to kind of leverage some of your wins, right? So share your wins. Find good communication channels. When you're small, find ways to meet in person and as a group. And when you're larger, find ways to have, a nice, kind of intimate communication method, whether it's, via email or social or really whatever your sort of authentic channel is there. And then, over time, you'll find whether it's like conferences or, small investment groups. I mean, there's 100 different forms of, how investors get together and form communities. Find those communities. You'll find them over time. Ask questions. Hey, who do you talk to? About investing, and everyone will have, whether it's, 2 or 3 mentors or a couple of great investment groups that they're part of. It's a great way to get plugged in. You can kind of come in alongside those who, have found success with you and kind of just really share the experience. And that's a great way to leverage and kind of grow those relationships as well.
Great. So I'm going to go back to our industrial net lease, right? Triple net lease. So why triple net lease? Why not multifamily or any other asset class? Because you said you had experience on the single family, you looked into multifamily too. So now in industrial, and you've been in industrial for a while now, right? For what, 7 years, 8 years
Yeah,
now?
focused on that. A lot comes down to what are the, I would say industry level headwinds or tailwinds, to use a aviation reference there, in your asset class. And I really liked industrial really for 2 main reasons. As a asset class, industrial has seen really a huge kind of growth trajectory that doesn't really have an end, at least in the next couple of years, based on kind of what we're seeing in the markets now. And that one side is going to be e-commerce. And so really every year during recessions or growth periods, doesn't matter. Every year for the last, I think, 23 years now, e-commerce as a sector has grown year over year in the US and frankly in most markets worldwide. And that's, more Amazons, more stuff ordered online. Just the entire idea of buying and shipping products, whether it's groceries or, just everything, right? All that requires a stopping point, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 along the way from when it gets made to when it arrives at your door, right? All that is demand pressure on a limited amount of industrial supply. And then the second piece is more specific to the manufacturing space, is reshoring. And that's kind of driven, that really is former overseas manufacturing being brought back to the US. And 2 factors are behind that. One is going to be the relative increasing cost of overseas labor. And the second is going to be supply chain fragility. And so the latter, I think we really saw that quite a bit during COVID. And really just, manufacturers realizing, hey, even if I pay a little bit more to make things domestically, I have control over my supply chain. I have control over my product getting to my customers. And so big picture, both of those are, I mean, in my view, personal view, providing a huge amount of tailwinds for the industry overall. That means a lot of just continued increasing demand that I personally don't see a drop off on anytime, which also means from an investment class, you're going to see, consistent, attractive opportunities. You're always going to have a shortage of properties, and that puts demand pressure, and that's upward pricing pressure on the assets.
Mm-hmm. I was reading an article yesterday on Marcus and Millichap, and there was a little paragraph they're talking about the industrial or the net sale leaseback. And they say it might slow down a little bit, but it's going to pick back up very soon and it's going to do really, really well. So, what do you think? I mean, what do you see in your crystal ball? How this fluctuating interest rates and the economic uncertainty is impacting this asset class at this point, or what do you see the future?
Yeah, I mean, we've always viewed ourselves as a bit of contrarian investors. So
Mhm,
when, like right now, we're in a high rate environment, right? It's
mhm,
scary to a lot of folks, but I mean, we see over the last year, I think we've made from a basis standpoint,
mhm.
for industrial buildings, we've had probably some of the best acquisitions we've seen in 10 years. Are we paying more for debt? Yes, but debt is debt, right? Debt's temporary. We'll lock the rate in a level that makes sense, but that ebbs and flows. It goes up, it goes down, and if it goes down, we can refi, make a better spread. But at the end of the day, always remember you're buying real estate, and it's a long-term play. We like 5, 6, 7 year holds. It's really a great way to enjoy cash flow while you allow these assets to appreciate. And I mean, honestly, like I've never been more excited about the asset class. The pricing that we've been able to see over the last 12 months, I think it's opportunities maybe plateauing a bit, but I mean, at least for the next 6 to 8, 9, 10 months, I think we're going to still see some fabulous buy side opportunities in this market. And then, as always, the pendulum will swing and it'll be a great time to sell, and we'll all sell everything and make a bunch of money and do it all over again.
That's true. So you said the cost of capital is a little bit higher, on the debt side, like interest rates are higher, strategies, like you've been doing this, or your team is doing it for a long time, right? So, and now since we are in a different environment, so much uncertainty in the market space. So you think you had to tweak the strategies a little bit to fit in the market and still be profitable and
Yeah,
mitigate some risk there?
the strategies are always developing, right? And we become sharper as a team, year over year. Every time we have an execution on a new acquisition, we get better, right? And then the market always shifts, right? And sometimes, I always mention that pendulum. You're either capital heavy, deal light, or deal heavy, capital light, and it's the nature of the game. But I
Mhm.
think being able to play in those inflection points is where opportunity really lies. And we see it a lot, right? We compete with a lot of bigger shops, a lot of publicly traded industrial REITs, some of them 10 times our size, right? And people go, hey, how do you compete? And a lot of times when they're in that like inflection point where there's uncertainty in the market, a lot of times they'll just freeze and they'll say, all right, we're not doing any buy or sell activity for 6 months, and they'll just lock up. Or their banking relationships are big, giant national banks who don't want to lend for the same reasons. But we play with regional banks. We play with, folks who know submarkets really well, who still go, hey, you know what? Like the debt markets are a little wild right now, but this is a fantastic opportunity. I mean, we had a few properties, just to use an example, in markets where replacement cost probably was somewhere like 140 a foot, and we were buying for like $40 a foot. I mean, literally like 25% of replacement cost. I mean, in any market, a few years from now, I don't care where interest rates are, that deal's going to make money. And that, kind of being able to see that and go, I don't really even care what I have to pay on debt on this. This is going to be a screaming deal over the next couple of years. You pair it with a great tenant, and we have a really strong underwriting team in-house. So we're able to really get strip down, really core view of the financial health of our tenants. And that's really the underlying risk on our asset class, is say, we want a 20-year relationship with this tenant. I just need to, how sure am I that they're going to stay in business and they're going to pay their rent? So as long as our credit team feels good about it, we can go in there and then we can make the pricing work for real opportunity there.
Right. So you do kind of twofold or threefold, right? One on the real estate, and then also you do kind of due diligence on the tenant
Hmm.
because the owner is going to become a tenant now, and it's going to be long-term tenant. So you wanted to make sure their credit is good, their history is good, and going into
Hmm.
future they're going to be good, so they're going to be paying the rent. So I'm going to ask you one question over here. A lot of people they like multifamily asset class, and I like multifamily as well. So a lot of time people don't want it to pivot because they feel like I do not know much about industrial. I'm not sure if I wanted to invest in industrial. So I wanted to hear from you, what is the difference between the multifamily asset class and the industrial asset class? Because both has tenants. One has even longer term tenants. The
Yeah.
lease is 20 years long with two 10-year options, like 40-year lease versus 1-year lease.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack in that question there. I would say structurally, and to lead off here, I actually am a big fan of multifamily, and I have, probably about 20% of my personal investment portfolio in real estate is in multifamily. I love it. Um, industrial is my bread and butter. I think it'll always be my first love, if you will. But no, it's really interesting. I mean, comparatively, multifamily, typically, you're coming in, you're managing a lot of really kind of low or no credit tenants, right? But you're basically managing around a, sort of pro forma occupancy level.
Right.
Often you coming in at below market and you feel that, it's going to be management heavy. It's really going to be, I think the skill set of the operator after acquisition is extremely important in multifamily, right? To be able to say, hey, can I actually get more of these rooms rented up? Can I actually perform the capital improvements that I want? And it's a lot more expense management as well, a huge amount of expense management. Whereas the industrial side is really interesting because I'm effectively, it's much more of a defensive play. I'm coming in, I'm buying it with the tenant in place all the time, fully occupied, right? So I always start with 100% occupancy. And at that point, it's my deal to lose, right? So I'm coming in very much to go, hey, I have a great performing asset from day one. How am I going to make sure I keep it there, right? And so I'm not managing occupancy in a way that I'm looking for an aggregate level. I'm like, I need for this to stay 100% occupied. And that's sort of what my gambles around. And we've performed, it is very possible to do it. I think over 10 years and about 140 tenants, we've only had one default across that whole portfolio there. So with that, it's much more of a defensive play, and it's much less of an expense play. It's less of a real estate play, right? Because all of expenses and all of the management of my building, all that's paid fully by my tenant, right? So I'm sort of insulating out from a structure standpoint. I'm insulating my exposure to utility increases, to tax reassessments, to insurance premiums doubling. All that can and will still happen, but they're not my problem. They're my tenants. So that the structure in the relationship between landlord and tenant is way more important in an industrial deal. Whereas my skill set as an operator coming in is frankly less important because I've done most of the work up front before I acquire it in the form of that contract. So that contract really is how I show skill and finesse. Whereas in a multifamily side, really that on-site manager, and controlling costs after acquisition is way more important. So it's kind of like when does the work get done is a little different between deal to deal there.
Yeah, I agree on that because in multifamily, the work starts when the deal is closed, basically.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
industrial, everything is done upfront, and then it's all set to kind of take off to the next level, which I love about it. And I love the Met Capital team, and I love you guys, doing an amazing job. And like I said, one last deal that we did together. Super excited about that. And I learned from there that you guys have done like 44 successful exits with 20% solid ROI year over year. So I wanted to hear from you one success story, if you can share with us, kind of end to end from the investor perspective, how they should look at the deals or how they can do their due diligence, some of the goods and bads, red flags or like kind of green light to move ahead with this, if she can share something like that.
Yeah, I think the stories are usually easier focused on like an individual deal.
Mhm.
And then, we do a lot of funds now, and the funds are interesting because it's a compilation of stories, right? We're building a
Mhm.
portfolio of 15 to 20 really interesting stories, in a nice sort of blended, diversified fashion. But, an individual deal, oh gosh, there's a lot. One that we really liked, largely because we ended up growing our team with some of the people involved here. It was this aerospace deal. One of the first I did with Mag. It was down in Mansfield. It was called
Mhm.
Gamma Aerospace, and so
Mhm.
like a lot of our deals, it was kind of family-owned business. I think they were doing about 20 mil a year in revenue. They had just gotten acquired by a private equity shop, and the private equity shop sold us the real estate, leased it back, and then moved all that capital to grow the business. And they put a new CEO in, a talented guy named Steve Sigfusson. And we worked, set up a great 20-year lease. It was flawless, right? It was just, month after month, rent checks coming in as planned, no expenses, great cash flow to LPs, to investors. And about halfway through, they're like, hey, we're growing at such a rate, we need more space. And it doesn't put our lease in jeopardy, but they were like, hey, we're going to look for a second location to augment this one. And we're like, well, we actually have a development team in house, and we were able to actually do an expansion. We were able to develop an additional, I think, almost 40,000 square feet on one of their existing buildings to give them the capacity they needed. They were way happier because now they have, a better piece of real estate to meet their needs. We were able to roll the cost of that expansion into a new lease, extended it
Mhm.
out the term, and we also increased the price per foot to accommodate all that development plus a little spread for our investors, and really a win-win on that side. And that one was really neat because it was a way that we were able to not only structure a great deal from day one, but we were able to capitalize on an opportunity that showed up during the hold period. And I think investors on that ended up seeing, significantly higher than what the original projected IRRs were on the deal. So.
I know we are out of time, but I wanted to ask you this question because this question comes a lot of times, when you come to this net lease or the triple net lease, how do you decide the per foot price? Because there's not many comparables available because it's kind of, solo one-off opportunity out there somewhere in the wilderness, maybe, or maybe in town as well, but it's going to be one huge space. So how do you decide that, or what are the deciding factors?
That's the art, Vinki.
I know, that's what I want to know.
No, it's one really important thing to remember when you come in, especially with sale leaseback, is the price per foot on the real estate and the price per foot on the lease are inextricably tied, right? You
Mhm.
cannot break those. So one can have a scenario where one pays, maybe on the high side of market for the real estate, but conversely leases it back at the high side of the rent market, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe the tenant wants low rent. So you go, okay, I'm going to buy on the low side of the market for the building, and I'm going to lease it back to you on the low side.
Mhm.
And then where do how do you figure out where that pendulum falls? It comes down to risk, right? So the riskier it is, the more rent you're going to demand, and the lower basis on the real estate you're going to demand. That risk is really captured in the cap rate. So the higher the cap rate, the more implied risk for the buyer. So that higher cap rate is going to drive higher rent and or lower price of the real estate. And what's going to determine that cap rate is going to be several things, right? You're going to look at strength of your tenant is huge. Bigger your tenant, stronger they are, better credit. That means lower risk. That means lower cap rate, right? Second piece is going to be how strong is my lease? Do I have 20 years on the lease or do I have 5 years, right? The longer the lease, the better it is for the buyer. So the buyer is willing to pay a lower cap rate coming in. And then lastly, you're going to look at Metro. You're obviously going to have a lower perceived risk buying, say, in downtown Dallas than you would in a more secondary or tertiary town in, say, Kansas, right? Especially if you did lose a tenant, how easy would it be to release, right? So the more central I am, effectively that's going to drive a lower cap rate commensurate with lower perceived risk there. So those are the main three, I would say, components that kind of swing the pendulum left and right. And then really how you land on your price is a bit of an art form. So that's, to what is a property worth, what someone's willing to pay for it, right? So at the end of the day, it comes down to just a lot of iterations. Both our principals have been doing this 30 years each, long time. And so they've just kind of it's a finesse expertise that you build up over decades in the game, and that's how we feel like we were able to acquire competitively there.
That's true. That experience, I would call it, the business intelligence comes in handy, basically, to
Yeah.
make the next deal better for your investors. So, lastly, what advice do you have for the newcomers to the industrial sale leaseback space?
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult space to just get started in, largely because you're playing with larger players. There's not a lot of entry level industrial, and it requires a kind of unique skill set with underwriting tenants and understanding a lot of the unique elements. So always, at least when you get started with a partner, whether it's a JV partner or you're investing passively with an experienced sponsor. The best way to do it is to learn, and best way to choose a sponsor is ask your friends. Find out what they're investing with, find out if they've had a good experience. It's a great starting point. Then do your own due diligence. But I always say that's a great way to get your feet wet in a new asset class, and then you can learn as you go and decide, hey, do I want to stay on this track or deviate? But at least you're building experience on the way.
Great. So, from all your experience until now, share one more golden nugget with my audience.
One more golden nugget, huh? Take some time to do some non-real estate stuff. It's really easy to get so caught up in the weeds. Just remember, we're all humans behind it. I thrive on human connection, and I travel, have interests, have hobbies, share them, especially with those you're investing with. And I feel like that just really enriches the experience in a way that just talking only business can't.
Yeah, I like that, because we shouldn't forget to live, right? In the chaos life, or running or chasing money or chasing some career or some
Yeah,
job or
remember why you're
job.
doing it, right?
Exactly. And then you forget to live. The
Yeah.
main thing is to live, and then you strive for something better. So this brings us to our rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer in one word or one sentence only. Are you ready?
Fire away.
All right. The first one is, what is one of the most important thing that you have learned in your life, and how did your life change after learning it?
Sleep, because I have a 10-day-old and I have lost
You,
that recently. And once you lose it, everything else comes unglued.
but this is a very precious moment. Congratulations, though.
Thank you. No, it's worth sacrificing a little sleep for a precious new one there.
That's true, for being so blessed. Share one good book with my audience that you love.
Man, I've been reading Tools of Titans by
Oh,
Tim Ferriss, and I love it. There's just little short, 3 to 5 page interviews with just super talented people, and he does a great way of just, pulling some of the most actionable and juicy nuggets, kind of like this times 1,000 different interviews all in one book, and just hugely impressive people. So yeah, Tools of Titans.
thank you for sharing that. In one word, what does life mean to you?
Fulfillment.
I love that. What is your biggest passion?
Oh, it changed all the time. Currently, I'm back onto flying. Like I just the weather's nice and nothing beats just hopping in. I've got a little 4-seater and take it around the San Francisco Bay Area here. It's just my happy place.
Nice. Maybe I can get a like ride with you once in a while?
Absolutely. You're buying lunch. I go flying.
Definitely will do that. If you could turn back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why?
I probably would have said keep doing the flying thing. But like the money's been on cars and and things that you've forgotten about and just a little I probably spent a little too much on tangible things that have come and gone, and I think I would have told myself, hey, at least get my foot in the door sooner, because it wasn't really until I was in my early 30s when I started on the real estate side. And I see guys who started even 5 years prior, even at a very limited capacity, and by the time they're 30, they're like, even if they don't have a ton of money in, they're like, they just get it, right? I mean, they've been in this space long enough, and they're able to kind of really, I think, grow their investment track from that point, way more efficiently. So earlier the better, even if it's not for a lot of dollars. So
That's true. I would say that too. I think any time is a good time because everybody has a different timeline in their life,
yep.
so everybody's vibrating on a different frequency. So
Hmm.
every time is the right time, but like, it could be different for everybody. That's the only thing I
Yep.
have to say. Yeah. So how can people reach out to you, Neil?
Yeah, I'd love to chat with new folks, myself and the team at MAG. Happy to share a little more about the model or the asset class there. But yeah, you can find us on our website, www.magcp.com, and that's for MAG Capital Partners. Or just shoot me a line, Neil, Neil, at magcp.com.
Thanks, Neil. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
All right, thanks, Vinky. Appreciate it.